The only way that the leader can ensure that his team has a very strong fighting chance and a very strong winning chance in that fight is to make sure that he makes or she makes his team sweat in peace and sweat in peace and sweat in peace so that they don't bleed in war. And that is the first responsibility of a leader. His responsibility is to train the troops and make them sweat. The second is that when the environment is unpredictable, the only thing that you can predict is the battle drills of a unit. Teams must have speed of trust in the capability of each other, not necessarily in liking each other. And the last part, I think, which is the responsibility of every leader, is to create teams that I call jigsaw teams. There are tile teams and jigsaw teams. What does a jigsaw team mean? A tile team means that every individual looks like the other one. They are exact job descriptions and they are placed next to each other, and you can build a tiled team like that. Whereas a jigsaw team is actually different. In a jigsaw team, every piece has to be looked at by the leader, and he has to envision where this piece fits into the overall picture. He has to experiment with each piece. But once he has welded a jigsaw team together, then that team is bound to each other, not to the wall. And that is why you can pick up a jigsaw puzzle by just holding it with two pieces and the entire puzzle comes in your hand. And that is the power of creating a team that is interdependent. But to do that, you actually have to build a team not around strengths, but around vulnerability. Most conflicts originate from an interpretation that both sides have towards what they seek. There is a very old story about two teams who were trying to fight each other because they both believed that they wanted the same thing. And let me share that story with you. So very quickly, this is a supposed scenario where there is the end of the world happening, and there is a team that is a nuclear device team which makes a nuclear device, and one of the essential ingredients of that nuclear device is orange juice, and the other team is making an antidote to a nuclear radiation, and they also require orange peel as part of their essential ingredients. And if both these teams were to try and procure oranges, and let's assume for sake of argument that the entire supply of oranges in the world is just 100 kilos, and it is with one person, and he can give it only to one of the teams. Now the teams could both fight to try to get that 100 kilos. But if one team got the 100 kilos, the other one would not be able to build the antidote. If the antidote team got it, they will not be able to build the nuclear device. But the crux lies in understanding that actually one team is looking at the orange juice and the other one is looking at the peel. And if they both collaborated, they will be able to manage both their objectives with the same 100 kilos. Our definition of the conflict, if we just redefined it, very often we'd find that actually there is no conflict. It was our misunderstanding of what we want, which is creating that conflict. The definition of an enemy is very simple. Anybody who stands between you or your goal, anybody who stands between you and your objective is essentially your enemy. It's as simple as that, because they are stopping you from achieving your goal. Leaders need to have the imagination to envision what could be the challenges towards their objective, and anything that is a challenge or an obstruction towards their objective is the enemy. And not all enemies have to be fought. Many of them can actually be co-opted. I think any startup needs to know very, very realistically that while they may have a strategic intent, while they may have a North Star towards which they are heading, they can never be certain about the path. The path will constantly keep changing. So I think startups need to be wedded to their core idea, not necessarily to their initial plan. Firstly, startups must realize that there will be a lot of changes in the way they achieve their goal than what they thought in the drawing board. That is the first lesson. Second lesson, they must know that even the best laid plans are completely useless as soon as they meet the enemy. So the moment you enter into the battlefield, all the plans that you had, all the assumptions that you made, all of them can go completely wrong. And therefore, going wrong is part of a startup's journey. A startup needs to make a lot of mistakes, and those mistakes are the learnings, and they should not be dismissed as inefficiencies or incompetencies or inability of people to manage variables. There will be mistakes, and those mistakes are the nature and to a certain extent excitement of being in a startup. The third is, I think, in a startup, you need oodles of energy. You need loads of optimism. So remember that established organization and established companies create a breed of leaders who have fear of failure. A Toyota will have a fear of failure if they attempt to do something which is different from a combustion engine car. But Elon Musk doesn't have that fear of failure. He has hope for success. So startups' pedigree of leaders must have hope for success and not be driven by fear of failure. I look up to any person out there who on a 8,000 rupees salary is managing a family, is educating 2 children, he's looking after his parents. If one of his children gets dengue, the injection for dengue costs him exactly the same as it costs the richest man in the world. It is the same price that he has to pay. And in many ways, the smile with which these people all around us, whom we at times don't even see them, whether it's a housekeeping staff who cleans up our offices and therefore has to come at least 1 hour before we come and leave 1 hour after we leave, whether it's a driver who's ferrying us around, whether it's an auto rickshaw driver, each one of them is managing an entire family, a livelihood, educating his children at a sum that many of us, thankfully, would probably end up spending in 1 week's outing or 2 weeks outing. And these people are no less heroes. Their achievement on a daily basis is no less than some Olympic medalists, because they are fighting a battle on a daily basis and yet discharging their responsibilities. I look up to them. I genuinely look up to them, and I realize how blessed we are that we have got so much because we have won the lottery of life, and yet we find the time and the space and the deficiencies to crib.